In a recent video, we delved into one specific cause of anxiety. In my field, in the field of psychoanalysis, this is known as shame stress. Shame stress increases when there's a discrepancy between one's ideal sense of self, that's the perfect self, and the way they actually perform in reality. Shame stress oftentimes triggers what's known as an inner critical voice. You're lazy, you procrastinate, you're not good enough. And it is this inner critical voice that leads to another cause of anxiety. It's the aggressive inner critical voice. Now, this critical voice doesn't always present itself in such an overt way. For many individuals, this aggression can be split off or repressed. So what happens when this aggression is split off or repressed? How does it end up presenting itself? And what relationship does this have to narcissism, you may be wondering? Focusing exclusively on one's own faults can really prevent you from taking into consideration the reactions of others. It's like being encapsulated in a narcissistic bubble of self-criticism, completely blocking out the view of the outside world. Anxiety can create a narrative in your mind where you're the central figure, and it excludes very important people who are surrounding. If you've ever been around somebody who's incredibly anxious, I think this may resonate with you, because it's hard to feel like you're present in the room when they're in such a heightened state of anxiety. Here's a very simple example. You're at a party and you're telling a story to a friend or a colleague, and you notice that they glance at their phone. Immediately you go into your mind and you start ruminating. What's wrong with me? Am I boring? Was it something that I said? Now, once you leave that conversation, instead of mingling with other partygoers, you're sort of in your own mind and you're not really fully available. You're not really fully present. But how is this in any way related to the aggressive piece? I think you're starting to capture the piece about narcissism and the way you become so preoccupied to the exclusion of other people. But let's step back and really think about, where's the aggression here? Think about it this way. Have you ever tried to converse with somebody who's anxious? Perhaps your partner is convinced that you're being unfaithful. They're completely flooded with anxiety. They don't hear anything that you have to say. You try to reassure them that you do love them and that you do care about them, but they're so anxiously preoccupied, it doesn't seem like they hear anything that you're saying. No amount of reassurance puts a dent in this sort of narcissistic, anxious preoccupation of theirs. Here now is the link to the aggressive part. Anything that you have to say is blotted out. In other words, you begin to have this feeling of frustration, helplessness, and in essence, they render you impotent. There's nothing you can do. So the question may be, how do you relate to somebody who's so narcissistically and anxiously preoccupied when you're feeling frustrated? And you're feeling frustrated because that's the aggressive piece that I mentioned a moment ago that's coming out in an indirect way. The first rule of thumb, from my experience, is if you already try to reassure them of your love and commitment, now it's time to step back. And when I say step back, I do not mean create a boundary. I do not mean walk away from them. What I mean is step back and try to create some space. The first order of business is not to get entangled in the narcissistic web of anxiety. So here's an example. For the person at the party, I may ask them something like, is it possible that that person glanced at their phone for any other reason other than your impact on them? The aim, as you can see, is not to challenge the narcissism. The aim is to begin to help them question that automatic inner critical voice by questioning the absolute truth of this voice that they have in their head, again, we begin to help them create a little bit of space so that they can begin to reflect. By questioning the absolute truth of this inner critical voice, we create space for alternative explanations and questions. Now, you may have noticed that I'm not targeting the anxiety. In my opinion, the anxiety is just the manifest problem. It's not the latent problem. So what I'm trying to address is the critical voice, the shame, the humiliation, or the embarrassment. In my work with these individuals, and in my opinion, any skilled and experienced therapist will begin to help you confront and understand these unknown aspects of yourself. Delving into these unknown aspects is, in my opinion, and in my own experience, what oftentimes leads to lasting relief and results. Okay, I hope I was able to present you with a very different way of thinking about your anxiety. I'm really interested in hearing what you think about this perspective and approach. Please leave a comment below. We have to stop there for today, but until next time, bye for now.